We have a classic example of Washington corruption here. Former House Speaker John Boehner just landed himself a new job. Huffington Post reports tobacco giant Reynolds American Inc. announced Thursday that retired House Speaker John Boehner is joining the company's board of directors to serve on its Corporate Governance and Sustainability Committee. Boehner is known to be cozy with the tobacco industry. Infamously, he once passed out campaign contribution checks from the industry to members on the House floor, an action he acknowledged and said he regretted. Okay. This is a microcosm of all of Washington. This is what they do. Now, it just so happens that with John Boehner, he's doing it with the tobacco companies. He's a smoker himself, but more importantly than that, he's a massive sellout and corporate whore. And so over his career, he took massive amounts of money from the tobacco industry, literally handed out checks that, don't worry, they're not bribes. Shut up, they're not bribes. No quid pro quo, no quid pro quo, no quid pro quo. He hands it out on the floor to other politicians. And then, I wonder if they're going to do the bidding of the tobacco companies. No, it could never be. Don't you dare, malign the integrity and the honor of these, gentlemen from across the country. Please, come on, spare me. He was paid by them. He did them favors. Now they're really going to pay him back. So oftentimes what happens? Yeah, we're going to give you a job. Here's $1 million a year for sitting on your ass. Or make a few phone calls for me to some new, Republicans in Washington and let them know that, the door is open if they want to come have a conversation. So make new connections. This is what it is, man. And again, he's doing it with the tobacco companies, which is nefarious enough. But most of them end up doing it with Wall Street. So that's the Democrats and the Republicans. You have different firms or banks, give them a bunch of money to help run their campaigns. Then it's I scratch your back, you scratch mine. When they're elected, hey, there's a bill coming up. I'm not saying blah, 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 but, that's effectively a subsidy for our company. I mean, this is why $80 billion a year, a month? Is it month or year? I think it's month. Oh, sweet Jesus, please tell me it's not month. It might be a year or a month. I don't remember which it is, but $80 billion. You could all look it up as I'm talking now. This is the beauty of the internet. It goes to Wall Street. It's just a subsidy, a corporate welfare check, all the time. $80 billion. The idea that these people who, it's been proven that many of them are just flat out criminals and they're committing fraud, and fraud is the business model. But somehow they get the corporate welfare check. Hardworking middle-class people, you don't get that influx. You don't get, oh, don't worry, they need it for like research and development or something. No, but on Wall Street, they get it because they pay their bribes. That's what it really comes down to. Goldman Sachs sold these toxic packages, these subprime mortgage packages, and then they turned around and bet against those same packages that they just sold as awesome to unsuspecting clients. That's fraud. And they got away with it. This is what happens. Was it Citigroup? It wasn't Citigroup. Wells Fargo. It was Wells Fargo. Earlier in the week, we covered the story. The executive who headed the unit that was responsible for opening millions of fake accounts so that the people working for Wells Fargo could get giant bonuses, even though they didn't get the accounts, she left with a $125 million bonus. She oversaw fraud. They're like, oh, whatever, here, $125 million. Does it work like that with you? No, if you fuck up, you're gone. If they fuck up, they get rewarded. You fail, you get rewarded. You do well, you get rewarded. The system's rigged. And it's rigged in favor of the elites. And now you see a large reason as to why that is. If you pay your bribes, the government's always going to rush in to help you out when the going gets tough. I mean, so John Boehner does the bidding of these tobacco companies, and then lo and behold, he's out of there. He gets a job. Again, in Wall Street. Oh, you did the bidding of this big bank or that big bank. Well, when you leave, take 2 years off or so, and then boom, they're going to hire you $1 million a year for sitting on your ass. This is the government we have. And people wonder, hey, I can't figure it out. Why is it that we just elected Congress? We just elected them. And now they have a 9% approval rating. Why would the people vote for somebody who it's only a 9% approval rating of them? Or it's, overall 9% approval rating. Well, it's because they know across the board we're voting for the lesser of two evils, if you will. And we know that they're fucking us no matter what. So you have to restructure the system and change the nature of the system and the incentives within the system. So you got to get the money out of that system. And you got to have clean elections. Oh, everybody's all pie in the sky, blah, 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 never going to happen. There are countries that already do it. There are modern nations that do it. I mean, this is common in political discourse, this idea of clean elections. I fucking wrote my thesis on it when I was in college. So what you do is you get the private money out of the system, you publicly finance the campaigns, and then who are the politicians going to represent? Well, if it's illegal and they can't take private money from individual wealthy donors or corporations, they're much less likely to only represent them. And they're going to represent the people who are funding them. Wacky, I know. We got to do it. There's Move to Amend. You can join there and help out there. There's Represent.us. You could do that. Or there's Wolfpack. You know, TYT has been pushing Wolfpack for a while. Wolfpack is an attempt to get a constitutional amendment to get the money out of the system, as opposed to some of the other ways are just laws, and some of them are at a local level, so on and so forth. But the amendment, I think, is the best way, because then you make it ultimate law of the land. So you can't have unscrupulous politicians just flip on the law or ignore the law, you know, when they're there. The Constitution makes it much harder to do that. They can still do it, but it's much harder, and especially if you set a Supreme Court precedent where they hear cases and then they say, no, we have this amendment that says no private money in the system. Well, if that gets solidified in the court after you get the amendment, well, then you really set up a system that's much more healthy and not run by private donors.